Well, so Jeff, as somebody who benefited from it, it's the first time where I actually renewed my driver's license through email. I literally filled out a form, sent it in, and I think not even a week later, my new driver's license showed up in my mailbox, which was fantastic. But that, of course, leads to two questions for me. One, I gave you private information. How are you addressing the protection of my data? You mentioned earlier, right? You're going more data citizens, which means connecting the citizens so that I'm not entering my information multiple times into different systems. But Jeff, as an ex-chief data officer, my question will be is how are you protecting my data? Is that even a concern as we see more and more of states in the United States be much more concerned about the protection of private and sensitive information? And then the second question I will have is, you talked about expanding your footprint, ransomware, cyber attacks. So I threw a lot at you, but how do you think about the protection of data as you're trying to consolidate your systems and make it easier for people to get things done?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And there are a lot of different things that are happening in Connecticut with this. In fact, there's even an effort called Win 20, I believe it's called, and that's a really interesting piece where people share bits and pieces of data without the data actually moving from where it's originally home. So one of the things, and this is a really good effort that's going on, but I mean, one of the principles I'm trying to communicate to people is that you should treat data like a liability. If you don't need to collect something, don't collect it. Don't just, do you really need their phone number? I mean, all this kind of stuff. Everybody likes collecting data and putting it all in one place, and then we make copies and it's all over. That whole concept of being able to share information without actually sharing the data is very, very powerful. And I think something that we want to, really kind of continue doing with multiple areas. But another bit of that is really about, just the way that people are kind of accessing and working with data. Like, I mean, it's always like, and anybody who works in security knows it's like, dealing with the development community, especially. We have to have this production data and can't be scrambled, can't be masked. I mean, like all of these kind of things. And usually that's wrong. I'm not saying every time it's wrong, but usually it's wrong. And a lot of people forget, like there's production, which you have to protect. And then there's QA, there's development. You might have all these other environments. And if they're sitting there with production data, that's a challenge. I mean, that's something that you really need to make sure that those environments have the same security controls. Why would I attack production, with all this like security monitoring, all these controls around it, if I could attack development, right, which may have no controls? So really making sure that we are either scrubbing, scrambling, masking, tokenizing, whatever we can do to just kind of reduce the amount of data that everybody sees. It is a real benefit. I mean, we're in a day and age now where it's not overly difficult for somebody, let's take an insider, a motivated insider. It's not that difficult for them to take sensitive information and monetize it. That's the kind of attack that we now have to think about. And what that really means is that the people who have access to sensitive data need that access. And that's something that we really stress across all of our agencies. Some of them it's absolutely built into their DNA, like the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services is a great example. I mean, privacy is everything with them. It's all, private health information. We take great steps to make sure that information is protected and really, making sure that the right people have access. Because really, it all begins with access control, like who has access to the data in the first place, and should they have that access. Then we can talk about all the other controls that you can put around it, but it really starts with that very basic question of like, do the right people have access to do their job, and maybe only to just enough of that data to do their job. Like as an example, in a private company or possibly even in the Department of Motor Vehicles, it's like, do you really need to see my credit card number, or do you need to know that we have an active credit card on file? That's a very different kind of way of thinking about things, rather than just collecting the data and letting everybody see it who has any kind of need, really thinking about the model and making sure that only the right people have access to things, and that we're masking, scrambling, encrypting, all of the above for the rest. Now, on the subject of ransomware, so shifting gears just a little bit. Yeah, ransomware is just, that is really key right now. And it's something, I know there's been a few very high profile things. The city of Hartford was a good example. They're not under our direct supervision, but they went through a very public, ransomware attack that delayed the openings of schools. Just recently, CT Transit, which is actually a subcontractor and third party to the Department of Transportation. So CT Transit is a private company. They are not a state agency, but very much our problem as they have been going through a large ransomware, attack. And that's, again, another reason. So let's think about ransomware for a minute. Most of this, so this was Conti ransomware, which is a, very prominent, prolific, kind of attack that's happening. There's a whole gang behind this. But one of the things that it does is it destroys all your backups, right? So that you can't restore from backup. The other thing it does is exfiltrate your data, right? So it's like in some cases, we've seen 90% of a firm's data just leave, and it's now being held by these attackers. Now you could pay the ransom, and hopefully they're going to destroy that. But once it's gone, right? Like, do you really know they didn't keep a copy? Again, back to don't keep information that you really don't want, destroyed or exposed in any way. So ransomware is a really big thing. We've done quite a bit of work on it. We're still doing work on it, making sure that we are ready and protected in any way possible. These guys are very clever, though. This is not going to go away quickly, but it's gotten a lot of attention now. I think we just recently saw China ban Bitcoin. It's a great example. They feel like it's just being used for bad purposes. I don't think you're going to see that in the United States, but as it turns out, in some cases, it's actually not that hard to track somebody with Bitcoin, especially when it's hey, pay this $1.2 million ransom in Bitcoin. It's well, there's only so many transactions on the blockchain that are going to show that, right? And if we've already got a good idea of who you are, you might not be quite as anonymous as you think. So in some cases, that's really how they get to the bottom of those things. But yeah, ransomware is really important. I think relentless preparation is something that we do to make sure that, and really working with our third parties, right? Because again, one of the first things that we worry about when a third party is breached is, do we have any connections with them? What data of ours do they have? Now it's not, you don't have to just worry about your own security of your own data and your own company now, but you have to worry about all these third parties as well. And many companies, and financial services is typically using thousands. A firm like Citigroup might be using thousands of vendors, right? It's just very difficult. And they have very formal governance around that, but it just becomes, again, back to the concept of attack footprint. How do you protect something that big?